Hey everyone, it's time to talk some more Thomas Wooden Railway, and today's character is one of my favorites. He may be the number 2 engine on the Northwestern Railway, but he's number 1 in my heart. I am of course talking about Edward the Blue Engine, the very first character created by the Reverend W. Awdry and one of the essential engines in the Thomas and Friends franchise. In wooden form, Edward was part of the inaugural line of Thomas Wooden Railway products released in the early 90s. Despite being based on a Furnace Railway K2 class, albeit very modified, his wooden railway model is super conservative and doesn't even attempt to correctly portray his proper wheel arrangement. My theory is that this was done on purpose in order to distinguish him from James, another mixed traffic engine who is roughly the same size as Edward and was released at the same time. Still, it's always been a bit weird that Edward had plenty of space for a middle wheel, but was never given one. And as we're going to see, this would not be corrected for decades. Like all early 90s TWR products, there are many different versions of Edward that were released in a short period of time. This model contains staples on the bottom and a black sticker representing coal in his tender. And while I don't think Edward's early face is bad, I don't think it's as refined as some of the other characters in the line. His late 90s appearance with a more detailed smoke box, plastic coal, and a better fleshed out expression is a great improvement over his initial release. In 2002, Edward received his first major redesign, and the results were not great. A bigger smoke box and a wider boiler only distance himself from his slim K2 basis, and the new face doesn't invoke any of Edward's characteristics or emotions. This is honestly one of my least favorite designs to go back to. It really doesn't feel like Edward at all. To add insult to injury, his 2011 CGI upgrade only made his expression worse. Now I don't even know what engine I'm looking at. So for the first 10 years, we had a pretty solid version of Edward, and then the second 10 years left him looking nearly unrecognizable. However, our patience was finally rewarded in 2013 when the Fisher-Price version of Edward was released, and boy, this is what I'm talking about. The face is an exact replica of what the TV series was showing at the time. It's so good. This is one of my favorite Thomas Wooden Railway models of all time, and was one of the deciding factors to make me switch to the Fisher-Price CGI engines in my own series back in the day. However, things took a hit in 2017 when an updated version of Edward was released with a smaller face. Now, I don't automatically not like this Edward because the face is smaller. In fact, it's more accurate to the proportions of his smoke box. But it's like they didn't adjust the sizing or placement of the eye details in the factory after shrinking the face, and therefore we get this really weird version of Edward that is better off forgotten. Turns out, though, that this would be the last version of Edward we would get for a few years. When Thomas Wood was revealed in 2017, Edward was one of the legacy characters that was not included in the line's release. While it was a shame we were suddenly getting one less toy of Edward on store shelves, part of me was a little bit relieved because of the massive downgrades the engines were undergoing. It wasn't until 2020, just 1 year before Wood was discontinued, that we finally got a painted version of Edward in this form. At quick glance, it looks pretty similar to his last release, but let's not try to convince ourselves that the Wood version is anywhere near as good as a classic Thomas Wooden Railway model. But finally, in 2022, we got the Edward that dreams are made of. A full-length steam engine with a correct wheel arrangement, longer dimensions, a skinny smoke box and boiler. What a treat this is. After years of looking at what was basically a miniature version of Edward, this model is something special. I can't say that I'm a fan of this default expression. It raises more questions than it answers, and the tender isn't perfect either, but I'm willing to concede a few imperfections to get a proper Edward after 3 decades of waiting. If you haven't already been able to tell, I'm a huge fan of Edward, both in media and in the Wooden Railway line. Let's be real, he's definitely gotten the shaft a few times in the TV series and with his merchandise, but I'm really satisfied with where he's landed in recent years. Edward is an extremely essential character to Thomas and Friends as a whole, and the franchise is better off when he's around and receiving a proper treatment. And it's really great when his wooden railway models do him justice. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.